Hello, and welcome to this week's live weekly warm-up. This one is especially special, as they all are, but this one I'm really looking forward to because this was actually sort of requested by some people in the community. There was some conversation about pinkies and ring fingers and all of that fun stuff. So I decided to do a live weekly warm-up to sort of give some tips and ideas on how to work on that and some exercises to make the pinkies work particularly well. I am not entirely convinced that it is working on Facebook yet. Oh yes, it looks like it's still thinking about going live on Facebook. You gotta love the technology. In that case, I'll stall for just a few more moments and hopefully it will figure out what it's doing. But if you're on YouTube or Instagram, welcome to the live weekly warm-up. So the topic that we're discussing here is both the right pinky and the left pinky and the right and left ring fingers, which are notoriously tricky. They're some of the worst sort of fingers to coordinate on the instrument. And the reason why is because they're your weakest fingers. Oh, interesting. Now it says I'm offline in both places. Anyways, the fingers are the weakest because they're your smallest fingers. They also have the least independence in them because they're actually connected further down in your hand and in your arm. It's basically the same tendons that are operating your ring finger and your pinky finger. Online, sometimes like on TikTok, there have been challenges where you like hold your hand flat and like try to move one finger or the other, or like move, like hold your these two fingers and then like move these independently, or some challenges like that. And they're really difficult for most people because we don't have that strong independence of these two fingers because they're not designed to be that way. Again, I say this a lot to my students, but try to think about a time in your life where you use these two fingers independently other than playing an instrument. There's very, very few moments, maybe sometimes like tying knots or things like that, maybe a little bit, but for the most part, when we're grabbing something or turning a doorknob or things like that, it's always our pretty much whole hand is working together, and especially the pinky and ring fingers usually always work together. So what we have to do is we have to sort of rewire our brains and train our muscles to do something a little bit different, which can sometimes be quite difficult and quite tricky. So what we have to do is make exercises that can work on that. If you're trying to do this, working on some technical piece or something where you have to do this very quickly and you're worried about playing lots of notes, that can be quite challenging because you're so worried about the notes and the rhythms and the music. That doesn't work. That's why it's a great thing to make a warm-up out of. So what this warm-up is going to be is, I call it pinky practice. This exercise more or less actually comes from the Next Generation Clarinet method. So if you have my book, The Next Generation Clarinet Method, you'll find this exercise or very similar exercise at the end of the technique warm-up section. It's also a bit reminiscent of the finger flexibility stuff that's earlier on in the book as well. Now, what we're going to do is just play these different pinky keys. Remember I said that the problem is the connection between the ring finger and the pinky finger. So we need to work on making those really independent from each other. So what we're going to do are play a low G and then alternate with all of these other pinky keys. It doesn't really matter what order you go in. I think if I remember right, in the Next Generation Clarinet method, I go up like chromatically or through the higher notes. So it's E, F, F sharp, G sharp. And I might start in that order for right now, but I might change up the order a bit as well. And with all warm-up exercises, it's always fair game to sort of mix things up and see what you need to accomplish and try it out. So let me go ahead and demonstrate a bit. And I want you to pay really close attention actually to my ring finger and also the pinky. But see how as the pinky moves around, the ring finger is moving as little as possible. The reason why people get into trouble is as they move their pinky wherever it needs to go, that ring finger gets involved moving as well. And then the hole gets uncovered. And then there's issues there. So let me go ahead and just demonstrate this a little bit and just watch the pinky and ring fingers and watch that independent motion. And then maybe I'll change up the pattern. One that's really great to do is going from E to G sharp. That's one that I really need to work on because I have the hardest time making that transition when I'm playing like the E major or B major scale. So I'm going to do that one, maybe do the other way, maybe also do F to G sharp because that's also a pretty common finger transition that can be a little tricky sometimes. And you can see as I'm doing this, all of my other fingers are staying as relaxed as possible. We don't want to be like clamping down, like trying not to move any of those fingers because then that tension will translate to our pinky and our pinky won't be able to move fast enough. The goal is keeping these really in position, then moving the pinky around. Now, the next step, if you want to get your ring fingers involved, is to do it instead of alternating with G, alternate with A. So now that ring finger is also moving. Sometimes when we get this moving with the pinky, then we'll get into that trouble of it goes up, the pinky moves, the ring finger also moves, and then we miss the hole in either direction. So the point of this one now is to let the ring finger move, but make it the same independent motion where this is just going up and down to its hole, no matter where the pinky goes. They're not connected, they're totally independent. And you can do the same sort of variety of patterns. You can do whatever patterns you want. It doesn't actually matter which pinky keys you're playing, just as long as you're getting around to all of them and practicing those transitions and focusing on that ring finger sort of hitting the hole, landing on the hole comfortably in the same way every single time, which is easier said than done. Feel free to go nice and slow. You'll also notice I'm not using a metronome and I'm not going particularly in time, but I think that would be a good thing to do, to go with a metronome, go slow, maybe gradually speed up, be like all of the normal stuff that we do on good technique exercises applies to this as well. Now that was all the right pinky stuff. You can do the exact same things with the left pinky, starting with just G, so you don't have to worry about anything else moving around. And you can see on that one how my left pinky now is just wiggling around a little bit. That's not ideal. Again, we want it to be as independent as possible. But again, it's easier said than done. And it's okay if there's a tiny bit of wiggle there, as long as it's not uncovering the hole. That's where you'll really get into trouble. But as little translation of motion as possible, as independent motion as possible is always the goal. Now that's just for the pinky, but you can also work this into doing it with your ring finger as well. For this, we'll have to go all the way up to D and then down. So like this. And you can see, especially when I go faster and I reach over for the E key, this finger really wants to move around with it as well. And that's the thing that we're trying to avoid. So again, just going really slow so that you can really make it truly independent motion of the pinky, which is hard because biologically our hands aren't built to do that. We don't want to do that. So we have to retrain our fingers how to move. And that's why these pinky and ring fingers are such a pain all the time, because it's unnatural. It's something new that we have to learn and train our body to do. So it takes a lot of people a while to do that. Oftentimes, if you're having issues crossing the break and you're squeaking, the first place to check is with these ring fingers. Make sure that they're really covering the holes, and that you're not letting that get out of position and leaking a little bit, because you're stretching so far to get to the pinky key. You have to find a way to get the pinky over there without moving the ring finger and keeping those holes perfectly covered. So I hope this has been helpful. It doesn't look like Facebook ever decided to start working, so I will share the YouTube link to Facebook for sure as well. But I hope that this has been helpful. I think this will be a lot of fun for you to sort of work through and experiment with, and work on getting those pinkies independent first, and then see if you can keep the pinkies independent as you start moving your ring fingers as well. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you next week on the live weekly warm-up. And if you have any great ideas or anything that you're struggling with, let me know, and I will absolutely make a warm-up exercise to help you out with that. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next week on the next live weekly warm-up.